In recent years, we've seen rising political contestation surrounding transgender rights in the U.S., from HB 2 in North Carolina to Gavin Grimm's case in Virginia. On February 22nd, Agent Orange's administration revoked transgender protection guidelines on Title IX in a Dear Colleague letter from the ironically named Department of Justice and Department of Education. The letter argues that disputing interpretations being upheld in different federal courts is proof that the Obama administration's interpretation of sex hadn't undergone any formal public process, and refers to the interpretation as novel. The DOE and DOJ defers the decision-making power to states and local school districts in establishing educational policy. And less than 2 weeks later, the Supreme Court announced that it wouldn't be hearing the case of teenager Gavin Grimm against the Gloucester County School Board in Virginia. Refusing to follow the transgender protection guidelines allows each state to choose between two interpretations. 1, sex is only biological sex. 2, sex isn't just defined as biological sex. The Obama administration's guidelines argued that trans and non-binary gender students have the right to use the sex-segregated facilities, public bathrooms, and locker rooms that matches their respective gender. A biological determinist interpretation argues that sex is only biological sex, which means gender isn't a qualifier for entering a sex-segregated facility. This is the interpretation that was upheld in a federal district court in Texas in 2016. This isn't about bathrooms. If this was about bathrooms or sex only being biological sex, the federal government would require a number of different things that are kind of weird. It would require that everyone get genetic testing in order to determine their sex chromosomes. And then it would actually require that we have 6 bathrooms, not 2. 6 bathrooms based on the 6 most common sex chromosomes in humans versus the 2 men's and women's bathrooms that we have today. Or it will require that we have more than 3 bathrooms based on genitalia, which is a spectrum including penis, vagina, and other ambiguous genitalia. The facts of human biology then tell a different story than the one presented by the DOJ in the DOE's Dear Colleague letter. Let's go to the definition of sex and gender. Sex is a determination made through the application of socially agreed upon biological criteria for classifying persons as females, males, or neither. These classifications are sex categories. The criteria for classification can be genitalia or sex chromosomes. And it's important to note that genitalia and sex chromosomes don't necessarily agree with one another. Placement in a sex category is achieved through socially required displays that proclaim one's membership. And those socially required displays, that's gender. So what does this all mean? One can claim membership in a sex category no matter your sex criteria through socially required displays that proclaim your membership. The interpretation that the Obama administration uses is actually not at all novel. Genders outside of the binary existed prior to Euro-Western colonialism and continue to exist today. And the evidence for that can be found in history, anthropology, archaeology, as well as sociological scholarship on gender and sex. The actual novel interpretation is the Euro-Western colonial one that claims sex is only a binary biological sex. This isn't about bathrooms. It's about giving space to people who wish to force their will upon others through the determination of the genders of trans, non-binary, and intersex people. Public policies set precedents for what is and what is not socially acceptable behavior. The DOJ and DOE's decision gave room for entertaining arguments that gender is solely determined by biological sex, not by the person through their social displays. Violent dehumanizing words validate violent human actions, driven by the interest that transphobes have in regulating the world into the cis-normative image that they describe. It's only March, and already 7 trans women of color have been murdered. These are real consequences. And there are real consequences to entertaining any policy decision that implies that the humanity of transgender and non-binary people is negotiable or up for debate. This isn't about bathrooms. It's about power.